We're so glad to see you.
Yeah, glad to be here.
Joining us.
All right, we have a big audience tonight, so we're anxious to hear from you, Congressman Cleaver. So I'll kick it off here. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this Asbury United Methodist Church Zoom program. I want to extend a word of welcome to our special guest, Congressman Emanuel Cleaver II, and I will introduce him more formally in just a few minutes. But first, I want to recognize Asbury's Church and Society Committee, which has been hosting these programs really, especially throughout the pandemic. And I think this is our 7th Zoom program over the past 13 months or so. So wow. Hats off to our leadership of that committee, Pastor Lee Johnson, you see on the screen, who is the staff liaison to the committee, and to our committee chairperson, who is Ruth Hopkins. And they've provided great leadership, especially throughout the pandemic. My name is Teresa James, and I'm a member of that committee. And I also want to recognize Charlene Berner, who you see on the screen. She is our Asbury, in addition to being one of our very talented musicians, she is the communications person for us during the week at Asbury. And she takes care of all the technology for us and will be fielding questions for us during the program. You'll also see on the screen Nancy Twilman, who's another member of the committee and longtime member of Asbury Church, who will be guiding the discussion with Congressman Cleaver here in a few minutes. It is my great honor and pleasure to introduce Congressman Emanuel Cleaver II. He is currently serving his 9th term in the US Congress, representing the 5th Congressional District of Missouri. And before that, he had a distinguished career on the municipal level, serving on the City Council for Kansas City, Missouri, ultimately becoming the first African-American mayor of Kansas City, Missouri. As a congressman, he's also distinguished himself serving on significant committee posts and also serving a term as chair of the Black Congressional Caucus. He's devoted his entire adult life, I think, to public service in a variety of roles, including not only as a congressman and politician, but also as a United Methodist pastor. So he offers a unique perspective to us. He has also, maybe most significantly, been what I would consider a reliable and steady voice of reason during recent volatile and polarized times, someone we could count on for leadership in the local area. We're very fortunate to have him with us this evening to discuss social justice issues and the important role that those issues have and play in our lives. So without further ado, and we want to hear from Congressman Cleaver, I will pass on the program to Nancy Twilman, who will help guide the discussion with a few questions for Congressman Cleaver that he can, I imagine, run with. So Nancy?
Thank you, Teresa. I want to point out before I start with the questions that we have for the Congressman that Charlene Berner is going to be monitoring the chat and the Q&A session. So if you would like to get questions into the program that really relate to how we interact with people who have different views and then work for social change in those interactions, to go ahead and drop those questions in the chat or the Q&A. And a couple times during the presentation, Charlene will politely nag me that I need to recognize her for a second, and then if she has questions she needs to put forward, then we will go from there. Congressman Cleaver, if you don't necessarily like the questions, feel free to amend them. We really are trying to pick your brain and hear what you have to think on some topics. So I have questions I'd like to start with, and then we will see where those go. just a general softball out towards you. You have a long record of working very effectively for social justice, both as a clergyman and as a public servant. So what kind of personal and professional traits and practices do you think contribute to your success balancing those pieces?
Well, I grew up in Texas in a family of clergy. My great grandfather, Noah Albert Cleaver, Reverend Noah Albert Cleaver, was given 5 cents at the age of 15 and encouraged to go out and make a living for himself by his father, Frank Harrison Cleaver, down in Cherokee County, Texas, where the slaves were freed on a plantation owned by Henry and Captain Henry, as they called him, and it turned out that from my great grandpa, a whole group of Cleaver preachers would come into existence, and so I ended up in a family. My father's brother, my uncle, Reverend Leroy Cleaver Jr., my father's first cousin, the Reverend A.D. Cleaver, Alden Cleaver, my father's father, the Reverend Leroy Cleaver Jr., my cousin, Reverend Silas Cleaver, a United Methodist pastor in San Angelo, Texas. Excuse me. We can leave the state of Texas, and Bishop Luther Cleaver, San Francisco. I can go on and on. I won't, and so what happened is that I grew up in this church, but I was only introduced during those years to the sacerdotal, and that is that the pastors saw their almost exclusive responsibility of ministering to the sick, the wounded, the hurt, the administration of Holy Communion, the burial of the dead, and the comfort to the survivors, and weddings, and so forth. And then I was introduced by television to a whole group of clergy members who were different. As I'm in school, and so it's quite a struggle, because at the same time I had family members who would become the leaders of the National Black Panther movement. Eldridge Cleaver had become an international, actually, figure. New York Times bestseller book, Soul on Ice, used to be required reading in colleges. And Pete O'Neill, who was the head of the Black Panther Party in Kansas City, Missouri. So, I had the sacerdotal preachers in my family. This is what you do if you minister. And then I got the Eldridge Cleaver side, and they're saying, we got to fight. You don't have time to pray and do that stuff. You do that later when you get free. And then I listened to a man named Martin Luther King, who, for me, brought the best of both of those worlds together and came out with the theology of liberation. He wasn't the first liberationist, however, but he brought it out, and all of his followers. But the person who was most significant was a United Methodist pastor who, from my estimation, is the most significant civil rights figure in the United States of America, who's still alive, and who most people don't even know, and it bothers me. His name is James Lawson. He's 90 years old now, but he started out his ministry, same time with Martin Luther King and those guys, and then he refused to go to the war in Korea, and so he went to federal prison, rather than to go because it was an alien to his beliefs. So then he gets out of prison and he goes to India and he lives with Gandhi for almost 2 years. And then he comes back to the United States. And this is after he graduated from seminary. And he comes back to the United States and he bumps into Martin Luther King, and he tells Dr. King, he said, look, you know, I understand you're trying to get this movement going down in Alabama. And he said, you know, I want to sit down and talk to you about nonviolence. And he said, you know, I've met the most wonderful person in India, the great Mahatma. And he said, I want to teach you. So long story that I won't go further on, Jim Lawson gets appointed to a Methodist church in Nashville, which was, I think, like God sent him there. And he begins to train people in nonviolence. Among his students was a young guy named John Lewis. One of his other students was, of course, Martin Luther King Jr., Andrew Young, people like Ralph David Abernathy. All of these are the fathers in the ministry. I was 15 years old when I led my first demonstration. So I got involved with these giants, and I was a gopher. I don't want to make anybody believe I was sitting at the same table. I was a gopher and happy to do it, and learned a lot. And you know, all of them, thank God, you know, had their hands on me and helped shape me.
That's way more history than I expected, and it's absolutely stunning. So how did you move then from being around that emphasis on non-violence to using your own voice to advocate for change, to have conversations with people that are different, have different views than you do, how you begin those conversations, how you move those conversations to action?
Well, that wasn't easy because, you know, I grew up, and it's probably difficult for some of the people who are on the Zoom to even visualize this, and I think it's a good thing they don't. But I grew up in a rigidly segregated world down in Texas. I mean, look, I lived in a shack. I didn't even live in a house. I lived in a shack, which they showed on C-SPAN last week. I did a C-SPAN deal last Tuesday, I think it was, and they showed the shack where I was born and lived. But it was there were two worlds. I was in a world that I knew very little about, and then a world that I wanted to escape because I saw what could happen. And so I in my teen years, it just made more sense to me that it was easier to try to tie what was going on with the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, than with some of my other family members. I mean, Christ, also led a movement, and I know we like to think that it was 12 people, but if you go into the gospel, there were hundreds of people who followed Jesus, and hundreds of them were with him in Jerusalem. I won't get into that too much, but they were all following him, and he never talked about nonviolence. He just did it. He just practiced it, and which was far more powerful than lecturing about it or sending out videos. I mean, I guess they didn't have many videos, but nonetheless, I think for me, it just captured me. And then to be around these other people who believed it down to their bones and died practicing nonviolence. And that'll get you when you see somebody, declaring who you are is one thing, but being who you are is something altogether different. And that's what got me into the whole movement of nonviolence, which I practice now for the almost 90% of my life.
Do you have any specific examples of how you think that background has made you effective in the congressional arena?
Yes, because I don't hit anybody. I don't hit, you know, and trust me, if there's any place on earth that hitting could come in rather easily, it would be in Washington. You know, I mean, hitting could be a pretty big deal in Washington, but you know, I think that I ended up, at least in Congress, with the belief that maybe God allowed me to get into that body, to be one of the advocates of nonviolence and dependence on things beyond Washington as the most significant things on earth. And so I have practiced that. Now I practiced it long before I went to Washington, but you know, I never ever thought about violence. I had a bad temper growing up in public housing. When we left the shack, we moved to public housing. I lived 26 minutes from the Omni Hotel in downtown Dallas. My father moved us in public housing. We stayed there 7 years while he worked, and he worked 3 jobs, saved money, and sent my mother back to college, because when he got married, she was 18, I think, and she had put aside going to college. So it was like, if we're going to stay family, you got to go to college. And so my mother went to college when I was in the 7th grade, and you know, and my mother practiced the nonviolence. And she was a leader in Wichita Falls, Texas, in the African American community, and she practiced it. So I had my mother practice it, and even though my grandpa and all the other Cleavers practiced it, that wasn't, you know, that was not necessarily a part of the theology. It just kind of happened, you know, and so I was never around, you know, people who were shouting out an eye for an eye. Now, you know, that had to mean that I had to be careful, because I had, as I mentioned earlier, I had family members who certainly didn't believe that you turn the other cheek. They were very clear about what they believed, and you know, we just had a different philosophy, because some of those folk were deeply brought up in the church. The public probably doesn't know that about them, but they were. And so you know, it's not like I sat down and I had some unique experience and said, by God, I'm going to go nonviolent. It just kind of became who I was.
So how do you convert that approach to working in Congress past just having a polite disagreement with someone and actually working and advocating for change?
Usually I quit my job as in Congress about an average of 13 times a day. There was one day I quit for 36 times. I quit 36 times in 2011, I think, in February 2011. And so you know, I'd get frustrated and quit. But I eventually realized that both sides of the aisle were uneasy around me, and I exploited it. I mean, because first of all, and I don't want anybody to get me wrong. You know, I'd go down to the there's a place in Washington, the Democratic Club, where all the Democrats go and have dinner, and it's a private club, and so I don't drink, and so I don't drink alcohol. That doesn't mean I'm a good person. It just means I don't drink alcohol. But my friends would drink and they would be nervous, around me. And I would always just say, hey guys, hey, do what you do. But the more and more I realized that the way I conducted myself had an impact on my colleagues. And so then I thought, oh my goodness, okay. And then I started sending out letters to 434 members of Congress every week. I would pick some subject that, now it wasn't a sermon, or let me just say it this way, it wasn't a sermon based on Christian teachings or on the Holy Bible, although you could probably get each of those letters and connected with some scripture in the Bible. And then people began on both sides of the aisle respecting that. And all of a sudden I realized I had people, on both sides of the aisle liking me and conversing with me and asking me to do things with them. And so I felt that, and still do, that was maybe the reason I ended up in Congress anyway. Maybe that was my role to try during perhaps the most troublesome moment in U.S. history, to try to create some semblance of unity, that and also make people feel uncomfortable when they did things that they knew to be wrong and vicious toward others. I wish I could tell you I had planned it out and God told me before I went to Congress, this is what I want you to do. No, that didn't happen. That didn't happen. Now, I live in the United Methodist building, which is the oldest, the only non-government building on the Federal Mall. You have the 2 Senate office buildings, then you have the United States Capitol, the Senate side, United States Capitol, the House side, then you have 3 House buildings, then you have 1 division of the Library of Congress, and then you go down First Street and there's another division of the Library of Congress, and then next to it is the Supreme Court, and next to it is the United Methodist building. And it's a great story. I got to tell you the story. I got to tell you the story. Let me hurry. So back in 1980s, I guess the Senate decided they needed a new office building, and so, but as you know, Washington's congested. It's a small town. You can probably put Washington inside Kansas City maybe 100 times, I think, something like that, the whole city. And so they said, well, we have to use our eminent domain authority and take that building across the street and build us a new office building. Well, the bishop resided and still does on the 4th floor of that building, and he had to have been brilliant. So he decides, okay, somebody bring me a book with all the members of Congress over on the Senate side. So he gets the book, finds out there are 27 United Methodists in the group, and he calls each of them and says, how would you like to have an apartment over in the United Methodist building? We're going to convert some of these offices into little apartments. And about 3 or 4 moved over, but that ended the whole issue of eminent domain. And that's the power of the church. And so it sits there, probably worth $200 or $300 million right now. And I think they paid $20 million for everything back in the 1920s when they got the land. So anyway, I don't want to digress any further. So ask me some questions.
That's fine. Do you have an example of your work in Congress that you're especially proud of, where you were pushing for something that its heart you thought was a social justice issue and really taxed your abilities? That doesn't sound polite. where you had to really bring all of your skills to the table in order to have change happen?
Yes, a number of things, but I'll go to the first thing I ever introduced, which was, this won't sound difficult probably to people who are with us tonight. I introduced legislation that would require that all federal vehicles, automobiles, had to be energy efficient. They either had to be, electric, they had to be, a dual system running on either fossil fuel or gasoline, or E82, which would be corn and gasoline. And that doesn't seem like a big deal until you think about this. All members of Congress have the right to lease a car while they are in Washington or in their district. They can have one car. They can choose where they want to do it. And almost all of those individuals, this is what's amazing. Those were, you can imagine, these are members of Congress. So they have Lexuses, and they've got Cadillacs and Mercedes-Benzes. Well, those cars didn't come as a hybrid. You couldn't find a hybrid Cadillac. And so the bill starts moving, and both sides are feeling weird, like, this is horrible legislation because, it means we're going to get punished. But when I stood on the floor and advocated, almost every member of the United States House of Representatives, Republican, Democratic, Conservative, Oakland Raiders, it didn't matter. They all voted for it, and the law it's the law of the land now. Now, since then, and I think we influenced this. Since then, you can get an E85 or a hybrid Lexus. You can now get a Cadillac SUV that has E85. But back then it didn't. But when Congress did it, it touched the automobile industry, and so today, and nobody's ever. I don't have to worry about getting this undone. Nobody, even if they're on drugs, will ever introduce legislation to change things back. It's just not going to happen.
I want to pause just a second and check in with Charlene and see if she has questions that are really pertinent so far in our conversation.
Nothing right now. I think people might be just waiting we can wait till the end and have a little Q&A time.
Okay, cool. Then we will keep moving. Our Methodist tradition really has opportunities to act for social change. What habits do you think members of a faith community have to remain open to a growing understanding of the lived experience of people outside of their own congregation?
Do the front part of the question again.
I'm sorry. There's a lot in there. As a Methodist, we have lots of opportunities for social change.
Yes.
So what habits do you think in our own faith community we can have to stay open to the lived experiences of people not in our congregations?
Well, I think it's played out in a number of ways, I think, for us, for United Methodist. And that is, because of the Wesleyan tradition, we are a connected or a connection church. If you ask anybody, if they've been in the Methodist church for 30 minutes, it's a connectional system. That's what we have. I don't think we need to practice take that word lightly. We don't. Nobody goes out and says, well, we're a disconnectional church. We proudly, and sometimes maybe without even thinking, we are connectional. that is important. That is important. And as much as we have, I mean, we probably have the largest number of African Americans, not probably, we have the largest number of African Americans in the United Methodist Church than we have in any other mainline Protestant denomination. Not the Baptists, but they are independent. So there's no such thing as the Baptist Church. I mean, every church has its own pastor, bishop, pope, every congregation. And so, but our church is different. And so, I have told people over the years, maybe God is using us. We haven't lived it out as well as we should, but God is maybe using us to demonstrate that this connection, that all human beings are connected, all human creatures, all living things are connected in this world. I mean, there's no such thing as somebody or something that's disconnected to the rest of the world. I mean, you go to South America and you look, there are 10,000 different species, and the lungs of the planet are located there. I mean, we can't disconnect ourselves from that. We can't disconnect ourselves from the Arctic or Greenland. I mean, everything is connected. And I think, people are worried about the environment, as am I. I'm very worried. But I think the more we learn the connectivity with each other, the easier it is for us to understand that there's a connection between the trees and us. And I think our church is uniquely positioned to do this if we don't get weary, if we don't, get sidetracked. I mean, we all we have to do, we have everything in place except we got to practice it. We have to utilize it. And that's why I was so thrilled to do this this meeting this evening. I thought, this may be an opportunity for me to talk about this connectivity, and I'd give our denomination a C, maybe C minus right now in the connectivity, but at least we have a grade, and there are other I don't want to do comparisons, but we at least have a grade, and we have a chance to go up.
So if let's look at that C minus a little bit. Asbury is an open and progressive United Methodist congregation. What path do you see for members of our church or other Methodist churches working for social justice within the United Methodist Church? And I would even say specifically in terms of inclusion of the LGBTQ community members.
Yeah, the word has to be intentionality, and let me just, whenever I do speak to seminary classes, which I do, I'm in Washington. We have a seminary there, Wesley, in Washington D.C. at American University, Howard University, and one of the things I say to aspiring ministers, to the theologues in particular, is that I think that one of the worst things we can have are preachers, ministers, clergy who are risk adverse. I think that's antithetical to the gospel of Jesus Christ. And so, if we are not risk adverse, if we, then we do things and like this. I mean, you do this. I mean, there are a lot of churches you could do this, and it would tear up the church. And so I think what we do to raise the C from to a B is take chances on on trying to practice the gospel widely and openly with all people everywhere. And I have too many stories to do a program like this. My grandmother, Grandma Annie Mae, named her son, her youngest son, Emanuel Cleaver, after her brother, Willie Emanuel Barton. And so when her son went off to war, and her son and her daughter-in-law had a little boy, she said, I don't know if Emmanuel was going to come back from Korea, name that boy Emmanuel. So I got the name of Emmanuel. And so then my uncle Emmanuel, who went off in the Air Force, named his son Gary Emanuel. Gary Emanuel was different when we were kids, and there were 9 Cleaver kids of brothers, and then Hubert and I are first cousins, and then there was Gary. Gary was different, and we didn't know. I mean, all we knew is that he didn't like to play football with us, and he played with his female cousins, first cousins. And my first fight, the first fight I ever had in my life, I told my uncle this about 4 years ago. First fight I ever had in my life. We were playing in front of my cousin's grandmother, his maternal grandmother. We were playing down his house, and somebody across the street, some kid called him a sissy. And I had no idea, in the name of Jesus, what sissy meant. It just sounded bad. Because you are a sissy. Your cousin is a sissy. What? Anyway, so we got into a fight. The older we got, the more we realized that Gary was gay. 9 Cleaver kids, and our first cousin was gay. And after he graduated from high school, he went out to California. Long story short, he ends up joining the first AME church in Los Angeles, first African Methodist Episcopal Church. And he's in the choir, the men's choir. And then one day, the men's choir had a meeting without him. This is in 1983, and they go to the pastor and say, Pastor, if a Cleaver stays in the choir, most of the men are going to quit. And so the pastor said, well, why? They said, well, he has AIDS. And I said, well, but why are people going to quit? Well, they don't want to catch AIDS. From singing? Well, Pastor, I'm just telling you, we had a meeting and this is what they asked me to say. So the pastor says something to my cousin. Gary is devastated. He grew up in the church like the rest of us. We on Sundays, we go to church early in the morning. If we got home before 10 o'clock, it was a victory. And so Gary finds an abandoned house in Los Angeles. He takes a pad of paper and a pen, and he goes in and writes notes to us. And he stays there until he dies alone in an abandoned house. It's difficult for me to tell that story without, anyway. And so I don't understand hate. I don't understand exclusion and beating up on people. Here's what I know. If Gary could have been any other way and avoided all of the chaos in his life, he would have done it. I'm proud my son, Reverend Emanuel Cleaver III, was a major speaker at our annual conference on this issue, and will continue to do so. It's too long an answer, but I just think we have to be people of justice no matter what. And I will never, ever, ever in my life do anything with intention that if I'm conscious to hurt anybody who is different. And I always believed that it was true that, that God embraced the whole world, that we all are a part of his kingdom. And I couldn't find any scripture that says he excluded people. I was searching for something the other night. It was late, so I probably couldn't find everything. But
so if we embrace all, and if we are not risk adverse, do you see opportunities for the United Methodist churches in Kansas City to work together in Kansas City for social change?
Absolutely. My son and Adam Hamilton have been very publicly in a lot of situations working together on these kinds of issues. And even though it wasn't organized, 2 summers ago when after the George Floyd murder, and there were demonstrations all over Kansas City, I was one of the times I almost started crying, with and no way to stop. As when there was a rally on the plaza, about 4,000 or 5,000 people at the rally, and when they asked me to speak, I stood up to speak, and I looked out in the crowd, and the crowd was about 70% white, and that in and of itself, I thought, boy, I wish Dr. King could just see this. I hope God will pull back the windows of heaven and just let him see what was going on. But additionally, I was talking to some of the young women, and one of the young women told me that her class had visited our church, confirmation class had visited our church, and she was a member of a church in suburban Johnson County, and she also told me that her parents tried to keep her from coming to the demonstration, but I thought, we can do this. We have a better chance of doing it. Although the Anglican Church, the Episcopal Church, probably was better represented than our church, but I think, there are so many opportunities. I organized a group of people to come out and stand up against what was happening to Asians in our community. We had a conference, a press conference with police and FBI and leaders of civil rights organizations and elected officials from state and local governments, and we embraced the Asian community. And I think that, if there's any church that has the best opportunity to do that, it would be our church. I just don't think I don't think we're organized for that, or we don't have there's no existing framework. And so if E3, as he is called, my son, if E3 and Adam Hamilton don't call each other, there's no way for that. They take the initiative to do it, to get people together. And so but we need more than the two of them. We just need people to get together. Adam and I, a few years ago, decided we wanted to worship together. So we rented a Starlight Theater on a Sunday morning and had St. James and Resurrection having church together in starlight. You know, so I think that, you know, that we're limited only by our creativity and our desire.
And I think it sounds like you're coming a little bit back to being intentional also.
Yes.
I want to sort of loop back to some of the government content we hit earlier, because I see one that came across the chat. Do you think that the United Methodist Church General Board of Church and Society has a significant influence on legislation in Washington?
You know, boy, I'm glad you asked that question.
You are. I thought, okay.
I am so proud to live in the Methodist building. As you know, that's who owns that building, Church and Society. And I don't know if any of you have ever been by there, but you know, we have a big marquee out on the lawn, mm-hmm. And that the messages out there are discussed on Capitol Hill more than any other message. Now, I have to admit, some of the people are angry. Like there was one that I think made everybody, not everybody, made some people angry. It said, God created immigration with Noah. God created immigration policy with Noah, and so you know, that message out there is, I mean, jumping. They hold nothing back, and it's all theologically sound. And I do think that they are good, but the part that people probably don't know is that there are all kinds of denominations in that building renting space. The Catholic something, United Christians Appeal, you name it, they're in that building. There are only about 6 apartments. I live in it in one of them, but most of the space is being rented by Christian organizations, and not Methodist. There's not a Methodist office in the building except for the Church and Society.
Is there any specific piece of legislation you can refer to where you think the General Board made a strong impact?
I don't know. No, I think because they lobby on so many
topics.
I mean, they'll lobby on immigration, on the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, whatever. They are talking to members of Congress and sending literature. I'm very proud to be a Methodist. I mean, I got to tell you, they make me proud.
Charlene, I'm going to kick back to you. Do you have questions?
Yeah, sure do. I have a couple in the chat. First question is, Representative Cleaver, do you ever discuss religion with your Senate counterparts, such as Missouri Senator Roy Blunt? And if you do, how does it go?
Well, I think the founders made a mistake when they created the Senate. I think one of the worst things that happened in the history of the United States was the creation of the Senate. I'm joking, but not a lot. I'm joking, but not a lot. Mainly we don't see people over on the Senate side very often because I know people would assume that we see them a lot. I may see a senator every 2 or 3 weeks. We just don't. I mean, it's too much distance between us, and we're running all day. Now, Roy Blunt was the president of a religious college, Baptist college, here in Missouri, and I don't get a chance to talk religion week because we have our Bible studies in the House, and then there's a Bible study in the Senate. There are very little opportunities for us to actually get together. You know, we don't. I was just telling somebody. I met Mitt Romney for the first time 2 weeks ago in the White House in the Oval Office when we were meeting about the pending legislation. So we don't have a lot in common. But people like Roy Blunt, I've known him for, I did his brother's wedding in St. James United Methodist Church in 1985, I think. He was the best man, and so we worked together. We got some things done. We just got a bill done that will hopefully allow the Negro Leagues to pull in about $12 million. We had a coin, Negro Leagues coin, that we were successful in, and that's the most important, the most significant, the most difficult legislation to get approved. I know that most people probably even never heard of it, but if you get the support, which is very difficult to get, Treasury will make a coin out of whatever you put in the legislation, and it usually takes 3 or 4 years to get it done. And then these coin collectors will buy it up, and when they buy them, that money goes to a whatever was designated in the legislation. And in our joint bill, it was the Negro Leagues. And so then the GAO usually projects how much money will come in, and so the money that comes in will equal $6 million, and that will give them the opportunity to 1-for-1 match to come up with $12 million. So,
wow.
but no, I don't spend a lot of time with the Congressman Blunt. We do know each other. We do talk about religion.
I guess another question here is, what are the chances that President Biden's infrastructure and recent child care proposals will be enacted? And are there any Republicans willing to negotiate?
I was really frustrated yesterday because Senator McConnell, who is probably a good person, the Lord loves him. I think he takes care of his lawn. He probably is good to his doggies, so I'm not mad at him. But I thought what he said Sunday was not helpful when he said there will not be a single Republican who will vote for this package. And the reason that troubled me so is that I was over in the White House with the president and 4 other Republicans for trying to come up with some kind of a compromise. I mean, so he was saying to me and everybody else that have been meeting, you guys are wasting your time. I'm not interested in compromise. And, that doesn't mean I'm right and he's wrong. I'm just telling you what, that was a fact. I think I don't want to go to reconciliation because one day things will be reversed and they can come back on you. But I think that some of the things that have been proposed are so significant that either we here's the deal. If we don't pass those packages, we will confirm that the United States is no longer on center stage in the worldwide drama, that we're no longer a player. And that's really what is taking place around the globe. That is what is being believed now. That's what people are connecting to around the globe. And I can tell you, Pete O'Neill, who was the head of the Panthers in Kansas City, lives in Arusha, Tanzania. And in a visit with him, I mean, he'll tell you, the city hall in Arusha, the capital city of Tanzania, built by the Chinese. You go to Ethiopia and the African Union building, where it's like the United Nations of Africa, built by the Chinese. I mean, we are losing ground, and the world is losing faith in us. And this is our chance to say, no, we're coming back. We're not going to sit on the sidelines. But we also need to tell our own citizens that America can still do big things. Big things are not relegated to the Roosevelt era, to the highway system being built under Eisenhower, or Lyndon Johnson's Great Society. That we can still do great things. So that's why I'm so strongly in support of it, because I think we need the bridges. Missouri has 10,500 bridges in just Missouri. Most of them are in disrepair. Now in Kansas, I would imagine, I don't know that number, but I imagine it's 10, 15,000, like Missouri, and most of them are in bad shape. And so, what do we do for the next generation? Well, we're going to leave you guys a couple of 100,000 bad bridges. We can do this, and we can do it without breaking the country and tearing up the future of our children.
What are your thoughts about how we can address climate change?
Well, I think that we have some pretty ambitious plans right now that I am supporting that are tied up into in the plans that's brought forth by the president. And one of them, we're going to start giving tax breaks for municipalities that will not only manufacture, but locate charging stations all along the highway. If we're going to move toward electric cars, you got to think ahead. We got to have, if we're going to drive from here to St. Louis, we got to have some charging stations along the way, and then the automobile manufacturing world is already saying we're moving toward electric cars. I was very proud. I was on TV here about a month and a half ago with a press conference at the ATA. We just bought two brand new electric buses, and in this next program that we just brought forth, I just asked for six more at $1 million a piece. So I think it's slow, but we have to continue to do every little thing that we can do. One of the good things that happened to me during Lent, this was great. I can't hardly wait to tell you. So I discovered, because everybody was at home. My dog was here. That's another whole story. We don't have time. If you can invite me back another week, I can tell you about my dog, what he did to this whole family. But just think about this. We were home every day. I had 12 suits in the closet. And over an 8-month period, I did not put on one of them. Oh, not one. And so by the time Lent came, I decided, hey, look, I mean, why do I have 12 suits? And I have about 20, I'm embarrassed. I had about 20 in my closet in Washington, in my apartment, because I wear them even more up there. And then I started thinking, so we have 40 days of Lent. And if you go to my garage now, there's a big box in there. Every day, I deposited a clothing item in that box that I don't need. Mm-hmm. I mean, the only thing I could have said is I have that suit, but now I put it in a box. I don't need it. And my youngest son has become a minimalist, and so he's an actor, and he came home when the studios closed down in Los Angeles, and he came home, and he was going to stay with us until the fire. I mean, they were having the fires out there, plus the COVID, and so he came home. He stayed here about 6 weeks. He brought home one pair of tennis shoes, 2 pairs of jeans, underwear, and some white socks. That was it. And he said, I don't want anybody going out trying to buy me anything. You know, I mean, and I saw that and I thought, during Lent, I'm going to go to the Lord and make this commitment, which I made. And even though I don't do it, even after Lent, I have still been doing it. I've got some stuff in here now that I'm taking to the garage. And I know, I mean, we don't need what we, I mean, just, you know, we don't need most of the stuff we have. It's hanging in our closets and it's in our homes because we want it, and not because we need it. And you know, if we're going to save this planet, we're going to have to experience some discomfort, and the discomfort is silly. You know, you mean I can't have 12 suits anymore? I mean, gee, just think about that. I mean, 12 suits.
Sorry, didn't mean to cut you off.
No, go ahead.
Okay, we probably have time for one more question. Charlene, you got one last one?
And I'll be short. It's your fault for asking me questions.
This has been absolutely phenomenal. Charlene, can you hit one out for us?
Sure. Are you optimistic about the possibility of less polarization and more unity evolving between Democrats and Republicans over the next 4 years? And then as an addendum, what about the United Methodist Church?
Yeah, something has happened to our country, but I'm working on an op-ed for the New York Times right now, which will respond to this question, I think, a lot easier. And that is, I mean, the polarization is worse than you know. Whatever you think it is, as my son, when he said when he was a little baby, it's worser. Because we have people who, in the United States of America, who don't believe that there is a truth. You know, that the truth no longer exists. And so that's very dangerous from my perspective. I mean, we're at a time now. I mean, when you say, we can't hold hearings in Washington in committee hearings. I'm a chair of a committee. I had a hearing today over Zoom. People all over the country, members of Congress, we hold a hearing. And two of the members said, you know, look, we need to get back to having people meet in our hearing rooms. And other members responded by saying, I'm not going to meet into a room unless I know everybody's already taken their vaccine. And so we have 100 members of Congress, 100, the 435, 100 who either did not take the vaccine or will not tell you they took the vaccine for fear of the reaction of their constituents. Oh. And so as a result, we can't have hearings together because nobody will want to sit in a room with people, you know, who could be infected. And since June the 6th, you're not even gonna believe this, June the 6th, the Speaker of the House had to put up metal detectors at the door leading into the chamber where we vote. And then since those metal detectors have been up, 2 members have been fined $5,000 each for trying to bring a automatic pistol in the chamber. And so, you know, there are a lot of things, I could keep on naming things like that. But what I'm gonna tell you is that the majority of the people in the country, and it's sometimes difficult to see that, the the majority of the people in the country do believe that there is a truth and a falsehood. They do believe there's a right and a wrong. They stood up at the most critical time in the history of this nation. And just think about it. There are probably about 80 people who saved our democracy. And we don't think about it. All 62 of those judges who entertained baseless lawsuits about stolen elections, appointed by presidents from Reagan to Trump to Bush to Obama, all ruled, 62, including the Supreme Court. You know, and so, you know, then look at if you'd had two paid people in Atlanta, just two, if it had been the director of elections and the secretary of state, if they had been some other two people, democracy gone. Same way in Arizona. And so when I started taking a panoramic look at what happened, yes, we were close to losing the democracy, but the democracy held. It held. And why? The majority of the people, forget how conservative they are or liberal, the majority of the people, you know, have stood up at this moment, at the most critical moment in the history of this republic, 243 years, and said, no, we're not abandoning democracy. And I'm proud that the majority of our country, the majority, and we got to understand that and believe it and make sure we tell people, the majority of our country are not the people saying, I'm not going to take the vaccine. That it's not them. The majority of the people in this country believe that this is a great nation that can become greater. The majority of the people in this country don't like to do business on the basis of race. The majority of the people in this country believe that we all ought to have the opportunities that we can reach ourselves and exploit. And so I'm thrilled about that, and I think that this is a good moment. I mean, this is a moment we can tell our children and tell them to be sure to tell their children. This is the same moment when the children of Israel were told to put a marker in the road so that unborn generations could come by and ask, what do these rocks mean? What do these stones mean? This is Ebenezer. What do these stones mean? This stone represents your grandfathers and your grandmothers who struggled and did everything they could to try to build this nation. These stones represent people of faith and tradition who fought off all kinds of attempts to destroy the nation, not just with bombs and missiles, but within, which is the worst kind of devastation. This is a powerful country. Most of the people in this country are good and decent, and people who are racist don't want to be. How do I know? Because they lie. And so if people say, well, I'm not a racist, and they just took off their sheet or just got through making some wild, crazy statements on a radio show, and they say they're racist, that what they're saying, I don't want to be this way. And if I am, I don't want anybody to know it. That's progress. Look, we can make it. And being with you tonight gives me even more belief that we can make it, even greater hope that we can make it. Thank you for giving me this opportunity.
Hey, I want to thank you, Representative Cleaver, for spending your time with us tonight. And you were speaking mainly to a bunch of Kansans who don't go to the ballot box and see your name. But I'm looking over the list, and I go to the ballot box and I see your name because I live on the right side of things over in KCMO. So I'm just telling you. So
good to be with you.
Yeah, I do. So there are a couple other folks that do too, and we want to thank you. I want to thank you for your service to Kansas City. I've lived in Kansas City for almost 38 years, and you have done so much for all of us, and we need to give you an amen on this evening. So our next,
Pastor. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Our next speaker, just to tell you everybody, just to remind everybody, our next speaker is going to be on June the 10th at 7 o'clock. For this, our next Zoom will be Kyron Bates, and he's the coordinator of diversity, equity, and inclusion for the Shawnee Mission Public School District. So you're all invited back for that. And I think that with that, we will close off, and thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for
being here.
Thank you very, very much.
All right, bye.
Thanks everyone, have a good night.